The wind clawed at the ice fields of Aegis. 12. Snow hissed against metal and skin. Jonas Hale tightened his thermal hood and locked the last solar fin into place. He liked the silence out here. Silence did not argue. Silence did not bleed. After 20 years in Shadow Wars, he had earned quiet like a metal no one saw. A sound cut the dusk in half. A single energy crack. Not thunder. Not ice. A weapon. Jonas froze. He had never heard gunfire on this plateau. The native VYR kept to the valleys. Tall. Blue-skinned. Private. He scanned the white horizon. Nothing. Only drifting sparks of ice. Another shot. Closer this time. Then a short cry, thin and sharp, like metal tearing. He told himself it was not his problem. He had retired from problems. He had retired from hero work, from teams, from the slow list of names that never stopped. He stood there in the cold and tried to believe his own lie. A third shot decided for him. He moved fast. Inside the outpost, he grabbed his custom coil rifle, his goggles, and a compact med kit. The rifle hummed when he primed the cell. The sound was steady, comforting. He stepped back into the wind and cut across the rocks at a low angle, keeping to cover, counting his breath. He climbed a ridge and went prone. The goggles colored the world with heat. Two armored figures pounded through the snow below, their steps clean and skilled. Not locals. Mercs. A smaller shape stumbled ahead of them. It fell to one knee, rose, and fell again. White hair flashed. Blue skin. Slender frame. Young. Jonas found the first mark. He exhaled, long and even, and tapped the trigger. The coil spat a tight bolt that hit the lead Merc's weapon and slapped it from his hands. Sparks flared in the dark. The second Merc swung toward the ridge, searching for the shooter. Jonas dropped his next shot into the snow at their feet. A warning line. One more step and the line would move. The Mercs hesitated. They spoke quick hand signs. Then they peeled off into the gray, swallowed by wind and spin drift. Jonas slid down the ridge and reached the fallen VYR. She looked up at him with wide silver eyes. Her breath came fast and thin. A burned stripe marked her shoulder where an energy round had grazed her. He kept his voice low and calm. Easy, he said. I'm here to help. She did not know the words, but she knew tone. She stilled. He cut the fabric from the wound, cleaned it, and sealed it with a regenerative patch. The smell of scorched cloth and cold iron hung in the air. Her skin was cool under his gloves. Her hands trembled, but she did not pull away. Storm's coming, he said, glancing at the sky. The clouds were thick like iron plates. We need shelter. She tried to stand. Her legs shook. He lifted her in his arms. She was tall, but light, all long limbs and sharp angles. He moved carefully over the rocks, keeping his footing, feeling the weight of a stranger become his problem in the best possible way. By the time he reached the outpost, the blizzard had dropped. Wind slammed the door behind them. Snow dust swirled in the entry light like ash. Jonas set her on his cot. He checked the bandage, added heat packs, and wrapped her in a quilt. He warmed a bowl of broth and held it out. She watched his face for a long second. Then she reached, cautious and graceful, and sipped. Color slowly returned to her cheeks. He studied her from the chair by the door. The VYR were humanoid, but different in small, striking ways. Blue skin like twilight. White hair like frost. Slightly long arms. Eyes that caught light and held it. She looked young. Maybe the VYR version of a human teenager. She kept her gaze on him while she ate, as if any blink might change the room. What were they after? He asked, knowing she would not answer. Talking helped. Talking made the walls feel wider. Where is your clan? She finished the soup and set the bowl down with careful hands. Her eyelids drooped. The storm howled outside like a living thing. Jonas checked the door locks. He checked the generator. He checked the rifle. He sat back with the weapon across his lap and listened to the wind. He had not planned to care about anyone on this world. He had planned to outlast winter, fix things, and sleep. But life did not respect plans. It respected choices. Tonight he had made one. He had helped. And for the first time in a long time, the silence inside him shifted and warmed. The storm eased by dawn, leaving a world made of glass and silence. Snow glittered like crushed diamonds under the faint sun. Inside the small shelter, the air hummed with quiet warmth and tension. Jonas Hale woke before the heaters cycled. Years of training never let him sleep deep. He reached for his rifle out of habit, then paused. The VYR girl. She was still asleep, her breathing slow and even. Her wound looked cleaner now, sealed beneath the bandage. She was safe. For the moment. He turned toward the door to check the outer cameras, and froze. Someone was standing there. A tall shadow filled the doorway, framed by the rising light. The figure stepped in, and Jonas's grip tightened on the rifle. She was VYR, but not like the girl. Older. Stronger. Her blue skin carried darker tones, marked by curling white tattoos across her face and arms. Her armor looked handcrafted, woven plates of bone and metal, each etched with runes that shimmered faintly. A warrior. A dangerous one. Her eyes, pale silver and fierce, locked on his weapon. "You will explain," she said in rough but clear galactic common. The words rolled with authority. Jonas kept his rifle low but ready. "She was being hunted," he said. "I stopped it." The woman's gaze flicked to the cot, where the young girl stirred. Recognition softened the hard lines of her face. "Lumi," she whispered in her own tongue. Then her attention snapped back to Jonas. "You human. What?" He almost laughed. "Force of habit. You expect me to believe you helped her with no purpose?" He shrugged. "I was bored." Her expression barely shifted, but the edge in her stance relaxed by a fraction. "My name is Sarah," she said finally. "First blade of the Frost Guard. She pointed to Lumi, is the daughter of our chieftain. You have drawn blood into your life, human. That cannot be undone." Jonas smirked faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Do not joke of this. The Rykon mercenaries who hunted her are not common killers. They come for power, ours. They will return." Jonas sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Of course they will." She moved toward Lumi, kneeling beside her. The girl blinked awake, saw Sarah, and tears welled in her luminous eyes. The warrior touched her cheek gently, speaking in their own language, soft, melodic syllables that filled the room with warmth. "She says," Sarah translated, "you gave her food, warmth, and safety. She calls you spirit-bound." "I'll take that as a compliment," Jonas said, though he had no idea what it meant. Sarah stood and faced him again. "You cannot stay here. The hunters will track the energy from your shelter. They will come before the next moonrise." Jonas crossed his arms. "This is my home." "This world does not care about your home," she replied. "It cares who survives the cold." Their eyes met across the small room, a clash of two stubborn lives, one carved by war, the other by duty. For a heartbeat, neither looked away. Then Jonas nodded. "Fine. We move. I can make a sled for her. 2 days to your valley if the pass is clear." Sarah blinked, slightly surprised by his quick agreement. "You would travel with us?" "I didn't patch her up to hand her back to corpses." Lumi's soft laughter broke the heavy air. She said something musical, and Sarah translated with the ghost of a smile. "She says you are a strange man, Jonas Hale. I've been called worse." He packed fast, the rhythm of survival returning like an old song. Ammunition, thermal rations, emergency flares. He stripped half the outpost's equipment for parts and bolted them together into a crude but sturdy sled. Sarah watched him work, half curious, half skeptical. "You know machines," she said finally. "I know how to stay alive," he replied. When he was done, the sled gleamed under the dim sun, rough but solid. He wrapped Lumi in spare thermal gear, adjusted the straps, and lifted her gently onto the platform. Her silver eyes met his. Gratitude flickered there, silent, deep. Sarah stood beside him, spear across her back. "You move like a soldier." "I was one," Jonas said quietly. "A long time ago." She nodded once, as if that answered everything. "Then you know what follows mercy." "Yeah," he said, glancing toward the horizon where dark clouds were already forming again. "Trouble." The three of them stepped out into the white expanse. The wind began to rise. Behind them, Jonas's outpost, his quiet life, his hard-earned solitude, disappeared under a veil of snow. Ahead waited the storm, the hunters, and something neither human nor VYR could yet name. Something that felt like the beginning of a new war and the end of an old loneliness. The frozen plains stretched for miles in every direction, an endless ocean of ice beneath a silver sky. Jonas Hale trudged forward, the sled rope biting into his gloved hands. The wind tore across the plateau, whispering through his helmet vents like ghosts. Behind him, the sled slid smoothly, carrying Lumi, wrapped in layers of thermal cloth. Her pale eyes watched the horizon, curious and afraid. Beside him, Sarah walked with the easy balance of a predator. She moved lightly, her spear strapped to her back, her armor catching the weak light. Every few minutes, she would stop, crouch, and study the snow. Tracks, air, scent. Sound. Nothing escaped her notice. Jonas broke the silence first. You track like you were born on ice. Sarah's mouth curved faintly. I was. The Frostguard are hunters before they are warriors. Must be hard living out here, he said, pulling the sled through a snowdrift. Her eyes flicked toward him. We do not live here. We endure. Jonas grinned. That sounds familiar. For a time, the only sound was the wind. Then Lumi stirred on the sled. She murmured something in her own language, pointing toward the darkening clouds ahead. Sarah's tone shifted, alert. Storm front, she said. It will hit before nightfall. Jonas squinted toward the horizon. The sky was bruising purple, the kind of color that meant trouble. Any shelter nearby? Sarah nodded. An ice cave. Old one. My people once used it as a resting place during winter hunts. They moved faster. The temperature dropped as the storm front advanced, each gust cutting sharper than the last. Snow lifted into swirling curtains that erased the world 1 meter at a time. Jonas's breath came in short bursts of fog. His legs ached, but he didn't stop. Finally, Sarah pointed to a shadow in the cliffs ahead, a narrow slit in the wall of ice. There. Jonas dragged the sled inside just as the storm slammed into the plateau. Wind howled against the cliffside, and the cave filled with an eerie echo. Inside, the air was still and heavy, the walls glowing faintly with trapped blue light. Strange symbols spiraled across the stone, runes that pulsed like slow heartbeats. This place, Sarah said softly, brushing frost from a carving, is older than my tribe. My ancestors called it the Hollow of Voices. They believed the mountain spoke here. Let's hope it says something nice, Jonas muttered, setting up a portable heater. The small device whined, then filled the cave with golden warmth. Steam rose from their clothes as the frost melted away. Lumi sat up, her face half lit by the heater's glow. She looked less fragile now, her wound sealed, her eyes brighter. Jonas handed her a cup of warm broth, and she smiled shyly. Sarah watched the exchange. She trusts you. Jonas shrugged. Trust's not something you earn with words. You earn it with warmth and soup. Sarah tilted her head, studying him. You joke even now? Why? Because fear doesn't fix anything, he said, checking the charge on his rifle. I've seen fear kill people faster than bullets. For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the storm beat itself to death outside. The cave's glow softened everything. The walls, their faces, the tension between species and pasts. Jonas finally asked, You said the hunters weren't common mercs. Who hired them? Sarah's expression hardened. The Rykon Syndicate. Raiders who roam the outer rings. They steal resources, slaves, relics, anything with value. And what's the value here? She hesitated, then said, Our world's heart. The Cold Star Core. A crystal buried beneath our temple. It feeds life across the northern valleys. Without it, our people will die. Jonas leaned back, absorbing that. So they came for energy. For power, she corrected. Always for power. The heater crackled faintly. Jonas looked at her across the soft light. You know they'll come again. In numbers. I know. Then you'll need more than spears. Sarah met his eyes. And you? Jonas Hale. Will you fight for a people not your own? He looked at the girl asleep beside the heater, her face peaceful despite the world outside. Maybe I already am. A small smile ghosted across Sarah's lips. Strange human. Been called worse. The storm outside began to fade. The wind lost its teeth, the howling replaced by a low sigh. Sarah rose, walked to the mouth of the cave, and stared into the blinding white beyond. Jonas joined her. Together, they watched the snow ease under a cold, weak sun. Sarah spoke without turning. You could have let her die? You did not. That choice will change everything. Jonas said nothing. He didn't need to. Behind them, the faint runes on the wall pulsed brighter, as if the mountain itself had heard and approved. When the storm finally broke, the world outside looked reborn. The plains glimmered under the pale light of Aegis 12's twin moons, smooth and untouched, as if the chaos of the night before had been only a dream. Jonas Hale stood at the mouth of the ice cave, rifle slung over his shoulder, breath steaming in the cold. But something felt wrong. The silence was too clean, too deliberate. He lowered his goggles and scanned the horizon. At first, nothing, just white emptiness. Then he saw it. A faint metallic glint embedded halfway up the nearest ridge. Too perfect to be natural. Jonas crouched and whispered, "Sarah, we've got company." The VYR warrior moved beside him in seconds, silent as smoke. She followed his gaze and narrowed her eyes. "What is it?" He adjusted the zoom on his scope. "Tracker. Maybe more than one. Looks like military grade. Someone mapped this location." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then they know where we are." Jonas nodded grimly. "And they'll be back soon." She didn't hesitate. "We move now." He turned to look at Lumi, still resting near the heater, her pale eyes half-lidded with fatigue. "She's not ready for another march." "Then she dies when they come," Sarah replied flatly. Jonas stared at her for a moment, then grabbed his pack. "Give me 10 minutes." He stepped out into the cold, boots crunching softly on the fresh snow, and climbed toward the ridge. The tracker was buried in the ice, a small triangular shard blinking faint blue. He pried it loose carefully and turned it over in his hand. A logo. Rykon Syndicate. Just as Sarah had said. He crouched, flipping open his toolkit. If they wanted a signal, he'd give them one, but not the one they expected. With quick, practiced motions, he rewired the node, rerouting the transmitter. Within minutes, it would project false readings, phantom movement leading the Syndicate miles in the wrong direction. When he returned to the cave, Sarah was already packing supplies. Her movements were brisk, controlled, but Jonas could sense the tension in her shoulders. "Modify the tracker," he said. "It'll make them think we're heading south." Sarah looked at him with a flicker of surprise. "You understand their tech?" "Used to hunt people like them," he said quietly. "Now I just hunt peace." She studied him, unreadable. "You are not like other humans I have met." "I'll take that as a compliment," he said with a faint smile. As they loaded the sled, Lumi tugged gently on Sarah's arm, speaking in her soft, musical tongue. Sarah listened, then nodded once. "She says you're touched by the sky spirits," Sarah translated. "That you walk where others fall." Jonas smirked. "Tell her it's just good training." Sarah didn't translate that. Maybe she didn't want to break the poetry of it. They left the cave behind, their tracks vanishing under blowing snow. The air had grown colder, the kind that seeped through layers and reached bone. By midday, the landscape changed, ridges breaking into cliffs, the ground glittering with buried crystals. Jonas stopped for a moment, watching sunlight bounce off a frozen waterfall. "Beautiful," he muttered. Sarah glanced back. "Beauty hides danger. This area belongs to the wind wolves." "Wind wolves. You'll hear them before you see them," she said simply. He frowned. "That's comforting." As if summoned by irony, a low, haunting howl rippled across the plain. Lumi shivered and drew her blanket tighter. Jonas raised his rifle. Dark shapes moved in the distance, sleek, long-limbed creatures with translucent fur that shimmered like heat haze. They moved as one, circling wide. "Pack of 6, Jonas whispered. Sarah's spear was already in her hand. "Keep them at range." The first wolf lunged, faster than any creature had a right to be. Jonas fired, the coil rifle cracking through the air. The bolt hit center mass, bursting in a spray of frost and light. The others hesitated, snarling, then broke formation. Sarah moved like a storm, her spear slicing arcs of silver through the air, fluid and terrifying. Jonas covered her flank, every shot deliberate. The world became a blur of snow, steel, and sound. When it ended, steam rose from the bodies of the fallen beasts. The wind carried their final howl away into the distance. Lumi's eyes were wide. She said something in a trembling voice. Sarah knelt, resting a hand on her shoulder. "She says the ancestors guided your aim," Sarah translated. Jonas chuckled softly. "I'll let them take the credit." They pushed onward until the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in cold, orange light. Ahead, jagged spires of ice jutted from the ground like teeth. "The Shatter Maze," Sarah said, almost reverent. "Once we cross, we will be close to my people's valley." Jonas studied the maze. Tall, sharp, impossible. "Looks like fun." Sarah looked at him seriously. "Few outsiders survive it. The ice confuses the senses. Even sound bends wrong." He grinned. "Good thing I'm bad at following directions." Her lips twitched, a rare smile, gone as soon as it appeared. They camped at the edge of the maze, setting up a small heat field that painted the snow gold. Lumi curled up, asleep almost instantly. Sarah sat beside the heater, watching the sky. You risked much for someone you do not know. Jonas leaned back on his pack. You risked more. We are raised to protect the vessel, she said quietly. But you, what binds you to her fate? He thought for a moment. Maybe I just got tired of running from reasons to care. For a long time, Sarah said nothing. Then, softly, the storm was not the only thing that changed in the night. He met her eyes across the flickering light. The air between them felt warmer than the heater could explain. Outside, the wind howled through the icy teeth of the maze. Inside, two souls, one human, one alien, sat in fragile peace, knowing dawn would bring more than cold. It would bring war. Dawn broke sharp and white, spilling light over the shatter maze like fire over glass. The jagged spires of ice glowed faintly blue, catching the rising sun in 1,000 fractured reflections. It was beautiful and dangerous. Jonas Hale stood at the entrance, adjusting the straps of his rifle and scanning the frozen labyrinth ahead. Looks like Mother Nature built herself a puzzle. Sarah, standing beside him, frowned. Not nature, she said. Ancestors. They shaped this place long ago to guard our valley. The ice remembers intruders. Jonas smirked. Reminds me of a few bases I broke into. She gave him a sidelong glance. You survived them? Depends on how you define survive, he muttered. Behind them, Lumi stirred awake on the sled. Her wound had healed, but her movements were still slow. She blinked at the maze, her silver eyes reflecting fear and wonder in equal measure. Sarah knelt beside her, speaking softly in their language. Lumi nodded, clutching the small ceremonial knife that hung around her neck. It glowed faintly, some kind of heirloom, Jonas guessed. Let's move, he said. If the syndicate's tracking us, we don't want to give them time to regroup. The shatter maze swallowed them whole. The walls towered 50 feet high, sheer and glistening, bending the light until up and down seemed to trade places. Every step echoed strangely, as if the maze whispered back. Sometimes Jonas thought he heard voices in the ice, soft, distant, almost human. Lumi didn't seem afraid. She touched the walls as they walked, humming a low tune. The sound resonated, and faint markings began to glow where her fingers passed. Sarah noticed his stare. She carries the mark of the vessel. The maze knows her. It will not harm us while she leads. Jonas raised an eyebrow. I'll take her word for it. Hours passed. They crossed narrow bridges of frozen crystal, descended through tunnels of blue glass, and climbed ridges slick as mirrors. The air grew warmer, faint steam rising from cracks beneath the floor. Thermal vents, Jonas murmured. You've got heat running under all this. Sarah nodded. The heart of our world burns deep below. It feeds the cold star core. He almost replied, but the distant sound of engines froze him in place. Sarah's head snapped up. Her eyes hardened. They found us. Jonas activated his scanner, and there it was, 3 Rykon skiffs, moving low across the snow, heading straight for the maze. They're sweeping with heat sensors. Must have tracked our footprints before the wind covered them. We cannot fight them here, Sarah said quickly. The maze shifts. Fire inside could bring it down. Jonas thought fast. Then we don't fight. We mislead. She frowned. Explain. He pointed toward a nearby chamber, a circular hollow surrounded by glowing spires. We make them think we're still deep in the maze. I'll rig a decoy beacon using my comm link and power cell. They'll chase ghosts while we slip through the vents. Sarah hesitated, studying him. You risk much, human. He grinned. Risk is my favorite bad idea. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Then may the ice remember your courage. He set the decoy quickly, planting the small device between the ice pillars. When it activated, it pulsed faint heat signatures, 3 life forms, perfectly mimicking their movement. The hum vibrated through the walls like a heartbeat. Minutes later, the sound of engines grew louder. The skiffs entered the outer corridor of the maze. Through a crack in the ice, Jonas saw flashes of dark armor. Sleek, mechanical, merciless. The Rykon soldiers spoke through filtered helmets, scanning with rifles that emitted low whines. One of them gestured. They moved toward the decoy signal. Jonas whispered, "Hook, line, sinker." Sarah tugged his arm. Now. They slipped away through a side passage, Lumi guiding them with her faintly glowing knife. The tunnels narrowed until Jonas had to crawl, ice scraping against his armor. His breath fogged the tight space. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a massive open cavern. Steam poured from fissures in the ground, and the walls shimmered with liquid light. Lumi gasped softly. "The warm hollow," Sarah said, her voice quiet with awe. "A place of safety. Few outsiders have seen it." Jonas straightened, brushing frost from his jacket. "Well, I feel honored. But we won't be safe for long." He pointed upward, where cracks in the ice ceiling revealed faint glints of metal. "Drones. Recon units," he said grimly. "They're still tracking heat signatures." Sarah cursed under her breath. "We must reach the valley soon. Then we need transport." She looked at him, puzzled. "Transport?" He nodded toward one of the fissures where hot air roared upward. "If we can overload that vent, we'll cause a pressure burst big enough to confuse their sensors and cover our exit. But it's going to be loud." "How loud?" "Earthquake loud." Sarah stared at him, then nodded. "Do it." Jonas stripped his pack, pulling out a set of explosive gel canisters. Old habit. He never went anywhere without a few bad ideas in a bottle. He placed them around the vent, set the timer, and backed off. When the explosion hit, the cavern roared like the planet itself had woken. Steam blasted upward, shaking the walls and throwing molten shards of ice in all directions. "Go," he shouted. They ran through the haze, half blind, following Lumi's glowing knife. The roar faded behind them as the vent collapsed, sealing the tunnel. When they finally burst into open air, the night sky was painted with auroras, green and violet ribbons dancing over the endless ice. Below, far in the distance, faint lights twinkled in the valley, the VYR settlement. "Home." Sarah's shoulders sagged with relief. "We made it." Jonas exhaled hard, looking back at the maze that now shimmered with shifting shadows. "Yeah," he said, "but they'll come again." Sarah's gaze followed his. "Then they will find more than prey waiting for them." Jonas smiled faintly, the reflection of the aurora shining in his tired eyes. "Good, because I'm done running." And as they descended toward the valley, human, warrior, and vessel, something new stirred in the cold. Not fear, not regret, but the quiet pulse of purpose returning to a man who thought he had lost it forever. The descent into the VYR valley was like walking into another world. The wind softened. The air grew faintly warmer. Pale blue lights shimmered in the distance. Glowing crystals set into the cliffside, marking the hidden settlement below. After days of endless white, the sight almost felt unreal. Jonas Hale slowed his pace, pulling the sled behind him. Lumi slept under layers of furs, her small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Sarah walked a few paces ahead, spear in hand, every movement alert and deliberate. She looked back once, and for the first time since they'd met, there was something new in her eyes, relief. "The heart of my people lies ahead," she said. "Once we cross the bridge, we will be safe." Jonas scanned the horizon and frowned. "Safe's a relative term. I've seen what the syndicate brings to a fight." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then you know why we cannot run." The narrow ice bridge creaked under their boots as they crossed. Beyond it lay the VYR settlement, a breathtaking sight carved into the frozen cliffs. Towers of translucent crystal rose like spears of light. Smoke drifted lazily from vent chimneys. Dozens of figures moved among the terraces, their skin glowing faintly in the twilight. Jonas felt eyes on him long before he saw the faces. Warriors appeared along the edges of the cliffs, weapons raised, armor gleaming. The hum of energy lances filled the air. Sarah raised her hand. "Stand down," she shouted in her language. "The vessel lives." The reaction was instant. The tension rippled and broke. Warriors lowered their weapons. Murmurs spread like wind. A tall VYR man approached, his armor adorned with silver and bone, his presence commanding. He stopped before Sarah, his expression hard until his gaze fell on Lumi. His composure cracked. "My daughter," he breathed. Jonas realized who he was, the chief. Sarah knelt, bowing her head. "Chief Arion," she said, "your daughter is safe." This human, Jonas Hale, saved her life. The chief's eyes met Jonas's. They were sharp, almost painfully intelligent. "A human," he said in accented common. "Few of your kind venture this far north. Fewer still leave alive." Jonas gave a faint smile. "Guess I'm not great at following trends." That earned him a small, Reluctant grin from Sarah, but none from the chief. Come, Arion said curtly. The council must hear what has happened. Inside the great hall, heat radiated from natural vents beneath the floor. The walls were carved with ancient glyphs that shimmered faintly as they passed. Elders of the VYR sat in a semicircle, their white eyes reflecting the glow of the cold star crystal embedded in the ceiling. Sarah told the story in her tongue. How they found Lumi hunted by syndicate mercenaries, how Jonas had fought beside them through storms and beasts, how the trackers and drones had followed them across the shatter maze. Each word drew gasps, frowns, or murmurs from the council. When she finished, the chief turned to Jonas. The Rykon Syndicate, he said. They have raided us before, but never this far north. What do they seek? Jonas met his gaze steadily. They're not here for territory. They're here for power. They want your cold star core. It's not just an energy source. It's a weapon if someone knows how to use it. The hall went still. Even the vents seemed to quiet. How do you know this? An elder demanded. Jonas unhooked a small data chip from his wrist device. I pulled this from one of their trackers. It holds encrypted orders, deployment grids, tactical maps, supply routes. If I'm reading it right, they've set up a forward base 20 kilometers from here. Sarah's hands clenched around her spear. Then we have no time. An elder leaned forward. We must hide the core. Move it deeper beneath the temple. No, Jonas said immediately. If you move it, they'll detect the energy surge. You'll lead them right to it. The chief frowned. Then what do you suggest, human? Jonas stepped closer to the central map projection, tracing the terrain with his gloved finger. You can't beat them head on, but you can make this place a nightmare to invade. He began to lay out the plan, the kind of plan born from years in special operations. Use the ice fields as traps. Bury pressure mines beneath thin crusts of snow. Redirect heat vents to create fog banks that blind thermal scanners. Fortify the narrow bridges leading into the valley so they become kill zones. Sarah listened closely, her sharp mind catching every detail. You would fight with us? She asked. Jonas met her gaze. If I didn't, all this, he gestured around at the glowing halls, the murals, the ancient beauty, would burn. I've seen enough worlds die for one lifetime. The chief studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Then you will fight beside us, Jonas Hale. You will stand as an ally of the VYR. A murmur of approval swept through the hall. As the council dismissed, Jonas found himself alone with Sarah near the entrance. The tension between them had changed, no longer sharp and wary, but charged with something unspoken. You give orders like one born to lead, Sarah said softly. He chuckled. Old habits die slow. You could have left when we reached the valley. I could have, he said, but I didn't. Her eyes searched his face for a moment. Then she nodded. Tomorrow, we prepare. When they come, the ice will remember us. He smiled faintly. Then let's make sure it remembers well. Outside, the aurora painted the sky in shifting waves of color. The valley glowed beneath it like a sleeping giant. And somewhere in the distance, engines roared, low, steady, and growing closer. Jonas tightened his gloves and whispered to himself. Round 2. The first tremor came before dawn, a deep vibration that rippled through the frozen earth and woke the entire valley. Jonas Hale opened his eyes to the low hum of engines echoing off the cliffs. He didn't need sensors to know the Rykon Syndicate had arrived. He rolled off the cot and grabbed his rifle. Outside, the VYR settlement shimmered with pale blue light as warriors rushed into position. From the upper terraces, Sarah was already shouting commands, her voice cutting through the icy wind like steel. Positions. Watch the ridges. Hold until my signal. Jonas climbed to her side. They're early. They're desperate, she replied, her breath clouding the air. They know we will not run. He raised his scope. Dark shapes crept across the horizon. Dozens of armored transports and skiffs gliding low, their engines glowing orange against the snow. Behind them marched lines of syndicate soldiers, black armor gleaming like insects under the cold light. Jonas exhaled slowly. All right, he muttered. Let's give them the welcome they paid for. At his signal, the outer traps ignited. Buried charges detonated beneath the leading vehicles, sending shards of ice flying sky-high. The explosions echoed across the valley like thunder. The syndicate ranks broke, reforming into attack formations. Then the fog rolled in. Steam erupted from the redirected heat vents, spreading thick clouds that blinded scanners and hid the VYR positions completely. Through the haze, faint blue silhouettes moved, phantoms in the mist. The syndicate fired wildly, their energy bolts flashing like lightning. Jonas crouched beside Sarah behind a ridge of crystal. "Now," he said, "you're archers." She raised her arm and gave the signal. Dozens of VYR warriors stepped from the fog and unleashed a volley of plasma-tipped arrows. The sky lit up as the barrage struck the enemy line. "Beautiful," Jonas murmured. "Efficient," Sarah corrected, her eyes fierce. The syndicate pushed forward, using heavy walkers to crush through the ice. Jonas switched to his rifle's long-range mode, firing with precision that only decades of training could give. One by one, the walkers' power cores burst into blue flame. The ground shook under each collapse. But for every machine that fell, two more advanced. Their commander, a tall figure in reinforced black armor, strode through the smoke, shouting orders. Jonas recognized him instantly from his data scans. Commander Drex. Ruthless, intelligent, and patient. Sarah noticed him too. "That one," she hissed. "He leads them. He'll come straight for the temple," Jonas said. "That's where we'll stop him." They sprinted through the chaos, weaving between burning machines and collapsing ice. By the time they reached the temple steps, the enemy had already breached the outer walls. Drex's troops poured in, their armor glowing red against the cold blue stone. Lumi stood at the base of the great crystal, the cold star core itself, its light pulsing faster than Jonas had ever seen. The girl's small hands were pressed against it, her eyes closed in deep concentration. Sarah moved to guard her. Jonas joined her side, rifle ready. "We hold here." Drex appeared through the smoke, his voice amplified by his helmet. "Stand down. The core belongs to the syndicate now. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you live long enough to regret it." Jonas laughed softly. "You've got terrible negotiation skills. Then you'll die with them." He raised his plasma cannon, but never fired. The cold star core flared, flooding the chamber with blinding light. The ground shook as a surge of energy radiated outward. The syndicate troops screamed, their armor freezing solid in an instant. Their weapons turned brittle, snapping apart. Jonas felt the energy flow through him, warm, alive, powerful. The bond ritual from before had connected him to Sarah, and now the core's energy linked them both. They moved as one. Sarah lunged forward, her spear blazing with blue fire. Jonas fired in perfect sync, each shot clearing her path. Together, they tore through Drex's remaining guards until only the commander stood. He roared and swung his energy blade, sparks flying as it clashed against Sarah's spear. Jonas moved behind him, firing a precise shot that shattered his weapon's power cell. The explosion threw Drex backward into the temple wall. "Finish it," Sarah said. Jonas shook his head. "No, let him crawl home and tell them what happened here." Sarah hesitated, then lowered her weapon. "As you wish." Drex stared at them through his cracked visor, disbelief burning in his eyes. "You think this changes anything?" Jonas stepped closer. "No, but it reminds your kind of one thing. Humans don't run, and the VYR don't bow." With that, Sarah hurled her spear into the wall beside him. The energy burst through him clear of the chamber. He staggered out into the snow, defeated. Outside, the battle had ended. The fog cleared to reveal broken machines, silent weapons, and the VYR standing victorious among the ruins. The cold star core's glow spread across the valley, casting everything in soft blue light. Jonas stood beside Sarah, watching the smoke drift away. She turned to him, eyes bright. "It is done. For now," he said quietly. "They'll come again someday. Then we'll be ready." She stepped closer, the wind tugging at her white hair. "You fought for a people not your own. You could have left, but you stayed." Jonas smiled faintly. "Guess I found something worth staying for." Her lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. "Then perhaps the ice has finally chosen a new guardian." He reached out, brushing a strand of her hair aside. "I'm fine with that." As the twin suns rose over the shattered horizon, Jonas Hale, the soldier who had once sought solitude, stood among new allies and a new home. Humanity had proven its courage once again, not through conquest, but through connection, through the simple act of standing when no one else would. And in that frozen valley, beneath the endless auroras, the legend of the human of the ice wars was born.